Are we ready?
Yes, I think we have a full house. Somebody should kick it off.
I started the recording. Welcome everyone to SIG Instrumentation Biweekly. Today is October 13th. We have a few items on the agenda today. Up first is, I don't remember what the name behind the username is, but asking about the release of metric server.
Yeah, for this, we kind of need Merrick, and I don't see Merrick here today.
Yeah, because like Merrick is the only maintainer, like the one.
Yeah,
the only
Merrick
one
is
that
the
can get
primary
a
maintainer,
release.
so he would know. We can move this on to the next meeting, and I will ping Merrick and ask him to attend.
Cool.
All right. So Phil, you have a proposal.
Yeah,
some sort.
I guess I'm up. So we've been working, my team's been working on metrics specifically related to usage for a bit now, and thought it might be a good fit for the community as a sub-project. Especially Katrina and I have been talking about metrics as related to, you know, the utilization metrics and some of these things to help tune workloads. And she was also interested in it. We thought that the Kubernetes project might be a good place for us to collaborate on these. And I have a doc link that kind of outlines like, why not just, you know, the kube state metrics, or why not, you know, any of the various other solutions that already exist that I can kind of walk through here. But the intent is, you know, asking the SIG if this is something that there's any interest in having developed within the community.
Maybe can we walk the doc so folks have an idea of what
Yeah, do you want me,
is up for
should I share
contribution?
it?
Yeah,
Maybe like-
can someone give Phil co-host? I cannot.
Yes, I should be able to. More. Okay, Phil, you should now be a co-host and you should be able to share your screen.
All right. But I don't, let's see. Anyone want to take a bet on how long it figures out? How long it takes me to figure out a share Google?
Under 2 minutes.
I think that's about right.
That's a good bound.
Oh,
I'll put my money on 1 minute. You got it?
I gotta quit and reopen. It says. So I will be right back.
All right.
If there are folks that are new to the meeting while we're waiting for Phil to come back, I just wanted to let you know that if you feel comfortable, feel free to turn on your camera, say hi. We love having new contributors in SIG Instrumentation, and it's great to see all your faces. Paul, you have a hand up.
I would just like to say hello. Hi, everybody. Bye, everybody. I did also want to say that I have a pull request to add some basic reconciliation metrics to KCM that I simply need to reopen and rebase, having been starved for time with numerous distractions. And I am hoping to do that soon. Anyway, nice speaking to you all.
Would you be able to put a link to that in the agenda so then we can find it at a later date?
I sure can.
Thank you. Abo, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did.
Oh, quickly, can I get those host permissions again? There.
Yes, yep.
Thank you.
I'm on
Thank
it.
you.
Hey everyone, I'm Abo. I work with Phil on stuff he's about to show. So hopefully I can answer some questions. And hey Katrina, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I can introduce myself as well. My name is Katrina. I previously worked with Phil and Abo. I now work at Shopify, and I've still been talking to Phil about some of the stuff he's about to present. Shopify is pretty intrigued by it as well, so I'm here to support the proposal. And I mentioned it as well to some of my colleagues who work on platform efficiency and observability. And I know I see a few of them came here today as well, if they'd like to introduce themselves.
Yeah, so my name is Pedro. I'm also working currently at Shopify on the observability team. And yeah, here like intrigued by this proposal and quite interested in this like SIG in general. Nice to meet you all.
You're welcome.
Hey, I am Ty from Shopify as well on the platform efficiency team. I don't think you'll be seeing me as a regular here, but also interested in the proposal.
Hi everyone, same for me. I'm working on Shopify and the efficiency team, and we are working on little things that can be very interesting to have more metrics. So we try to follow this SIG too. Yeah.
And I'll introduce myself too. I'm Danny. I work with Paul, Ava, and Phil, and I worked with Katrina for a bit as well. Hey, Katrina. Oh, and I work with eHash too. Sorry.
Yeah, we work with eHash too. Sorry, eHash.
It's all good. Risha, were you about to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Richa. I work with Han and Venjia here. I joined Google around 3 months back, and I'm excited to be a part of these meetings and start contributing to the community.
Awesome.
Should I introduce myself too?
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right, I'm Phil Whitrock. I work here with Abot, eHash, Danny, and Paul, and have spent time in the community on oftentimes in SIG CLI, also some time in SIG release. So it's great coming over to this territory, getting to see the folks over here. And Han and I have hung out a bit, so it's good seeing all the Google folks.
You want to launch into it, Phil?
Yeah, I will do that. Okay, so like the TLDR, right, is that we developed this solution that we think is solves a problem. Certainly solves a problem for us, and we think it would solve a problem for others. And it was designed from the ground up after several rewrites. That is to be like generic and extensible, and really avoid hard coding any of our specific use cases or metadata, and really have that side-loaded through configuration. Here's like a TLDR example of just kind of like, here's something that is relatively difficult to do today, and that we're trying to make easy, right? And that's like, for all the containers in a workload, get the do a 1 second sample interval, and then show me the per container, or rather, if a pod has multiple containers, say you have that app container and then your logging container, right? For each one of those, so for the app container, show me the 95th percentile utilization for CPU over the last 5 minutes over all those 1 second samples across all the pods. And then the same thing for the logging container, right? And so, the use case for this, right, is like, I want to understand my requests and my limits set, to good values. How might I want to change them? And so getting this, 1 second sampling interval is much finer grained than say like a 15 or 30 second sampling interval you might get. So a couple things here that this provides that are challenging to get today. One is that finer grained sampling interval. Another is resolving those containers up into the workloads. So right, rather than having to join it with, what is the owner, and then walk the owner from replica set deployment and these sorts of things all through PromQL queries, which is like actually really quite challenging to do, and actually is very expensive. And if you have a sufficiently large number of containers, right, you don't want to be doing these massive joins. And the sampling interval is not 1 second, right? And Prometheus is not the right storage mechanism, in my opinion, for storing 1 second, time series at a 1 second granularity. It's, that would definitely blow up Prometheus. So having it at, a 1 second interval, scraped beforehand, and then, export to Prometheus, a 5-minute window, what the 95th percentile is, or the max, or the mean, or the median, or these sorts of things. And so this is kind of how we describe it. Again, this gets exported to Prometheus, so it's kind of a preprocessor for Prometheus to improve performance and offer a number of things. And it says, okay, grab me the CPU and memory, and I want to get container utilization. And then here's kind of what I'm aggregating against, right? So keep the container. These are the labels I want to keep. So there's a bunch of labels that, attach to this, like the node, for instance, and priority class and all these sorts of things, and drop all those, and instead keep these labels, and then give me the P95 for everything that has the same set of labels. So that's kind of the quick TLIDR example of like, how would you express in this in our configuration, how to get this metric, and then that metric gets exported to Prometheus. And then if you want to do additional PromQL on that, like it's very possible, like average over time, over a time window of like a day or a week or something like that.
There's a question in the chat. Where does the 5 minutes come in?
That is a configuration option. So the way this is implemented is that there's a scraper on each node that scrapes every second, and then stores it in a ring buffer, and then pushes it to a central service, over an interval. And so the scrape interval is a configuration option. Like, is it every second? Is it every 10th of a second? Is it every 2 seconds? The size of the ring buffer is a configuration option. Do you want to store 10 minutes worth of samples, 5 minutes worth of samples, 1 minute's worth of samples in that ring buffer before you start expiring? And then how frequently you push them to the main collector is a third configuration thing, right? So you could store, for instance, 5 minutes worth of samples, but push them every minute, so that the collector has, while it has a 5-minute window, it also has the most up-to-date set of metrics when it does get scraped. They're not 5 minutes old, for instance. So all of those are done through configuration options. We chose these particular numbers based off the 1 second scrape, I think, is off of the Google Autopilot paper. I believe that was, the interval chosen there. And so we said, well, I don't have a better interval that I have a strong feeling for, so we chose that. I think the 5 minutes was chosen because it matched kind of the scrape interval we were using for Prometheus at the time. So having the window of 5 minutes matched, made sure that each scrape got about all of the samples in it. That's how we chose those, but they're not fixed.
There's another question in the chat. Would this be a part of cube state metrics or KSM?
I mean, no, I don't see it as being part of either one of those. I mean, it's possible. I think it has a pretty different set of goals. It's much more focused. Cube state metrics publishes publishes a metric for everything, and it allows you to do a lot of really cool stuff. But to do to do this, for instance, you would need to do a lot of joins and still can't get at the second interval. And so it'd be a pretty big, I think, architecture shift for either one of those, and introduce maybe a lot of unnecessary complexity, and those solve other problems this doesn't solve. This is really just focused on capacity and usage metrics. And so introducing that complexity in kube state metrics, I don't think necessarily provides a lot of benefit.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but kube state metrics currently doesn't really have any tooling for utilization. Like, you would have to go, currently, I guess the open source solution is go scrape C-advisor endpoints on the kubelets.
Yeah, not in this sort of, not in this target, right? So this particular
so
example here,
this would be a new potential model or like tool of getting at it. Like existing without this thing are options for like getting that data on the nodes is either write your own thing, scrape C advisor. Is there anything I'm missing?
Right. You can use kube state metrics to get not this, but something else, right? So you can get it over a longer interval without the workload metadata attached, right? And I think maybe that's where, and that's actually how we started out. And that, you know, initially we started out with the kube state metrics and spent some time doing the PromQL joins to try and make that work before eventually settling on this solution. So yes, the answer is it doesn't do it.
Yeah, Ewout also said metric server, which makes sense. There's another question in the chat. Where is the data coming from? Kubelet, CAdvisor, Containerd, or directly from the process?
Fantastic question. So today, this is, I don't think, something that's like fixed in time, and we're happy to love to get feedback on better ways of doing it. We explored a number of different options. I think you're talking about the utilization data and the 1-second scrapes specifically. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my question, I think.
Okay. So right now what we do is we just mount the file system, the sys fs cgroup file system, and then walk it. We tried getting it from the Containerd, we tried different options. And turns out like walking the sys cgroup file system isn't particularly complex. And using some of those other tools is not particularly simple. And so because this worked out it was a small amount of code to do this, and worked pretty well, and gives not a lot of permissions, like having access to the Containerd socket, for instance, gives us stuff that we don't necessarily want to be able to do, but mounting the cgroup file system in read only really limits our capacity to do malicious things. So that's how we ended up doing that. But we're not stuck on this, and it doesn't work well for some things like micro VMs. You can't get at the container metrics and micro VM runtime. So I think we're going to continue to evolve. How do we get these metrics, and maybe have different options available where you select in the config, where do you want to get the metrics from?
Yeah, I'd be very interested in, and also like getting in touch. We've been kind of exploring in GK metrics if we can get these metrics in high resolution and where we'd get them from, and that was also what we looked at, like skipping kubelet and CAdvisor and directly looking at the file system and watching that as well to get the most resolution possible.
One nice thing too is that this example is just for containers, but we also have the C group. We scrape the C groups at a node level. So there's two dimensions. There's like the workload dimension, which is spread across a bunch of nodes, right? And then there's another dimension, which is like the node dimension. And so within the node dimension, you make, hey, like, how much is the system slice versus the kubepods C group using, right? Within the system slice, do I have some process like that takes up, is it really the kubelet that's the most, or do I have other processes in there? And what do they spike at? And we've seen some interesting, so we scrape those. We also export those P95s, maxes, those sorts of things. And we have seen interesting results where, there's certain processes running, in the system reserved that on average don't take a lot. But if you look at a 1-second granularity, they spike, like they actually take a ton at that very small interval. There's others that, just on average take a significant amount, but never spike. And having an understanding of that, I think is definitely interesting.
One other thing that might be interesting to look at, we've been at least discussing if it would be possible, is looking at some way of looking at OM killer events, because that's like the final point you get, like how much did you use before it got killed, and that's what we usually miss. When
100% killer, CPU throttling for C groups V2, various like memory pressure events, all that stuff. I think we want to look at, and some of that stuff is like partially wired in, but not complete. But we're certainly working towards getting all that sort of stuff, and then you can build, like you're saying, a collective picture of like, maybe my P95 usage was well below my request, but I'm still getting throttled, right? Possible thing. Should I keep walking through this doc? Or Or do we want to
So-
ask more questions?
We have 5 minutes left. So you're proposing basically to turn this into a SIG project?
Yep.
I'm open to it. We would need volunteers to
I'd be
maintain.
very interested, at least, because it's
Okay.
something we've been exploring.
Okay, we can, does anyone have any objections to this being a part of the SIG?
I have a hard time, to be honest, with this one, because essentially I feel like it's trying to replace the existing ways we have to collect the usage that is not already well optimized. Like we've seen that it doesn't scale well to get the metrics from Kubelet directly, because like CAdvisor is not optimized. And I feel like this would be just a shortcut, like a shorthand to not like optimize CAdvisor. And just have the data from somewhere else.
Don't we have an ultimate goal of getting rid of CAdvisor anyways?
Yeah,
like
and
this
the
will
goal
give
is
us
to
a,
bring
this would be a good on-ramp for that potentially.
There is a related SIG node enhancement that they're working on to get all the CAdvisor metrics through the CRI.
The CRI stats one. I see this as complementary because this is only going to be, I think, a subset of those stats and at a much more scalable like level. Because with the CRI stats, well, first of all, also the CRI stats isn't everything from CAdvisor. That's also a subset. But I think that this is looking at much more granular data than the CRI stats proposal currently is.
Okay, I think
Like-
they had recently expanded that to be basically all of the CAdvisor metrics.
Yeah, I did see that the cap had been updated, but it wasn't clear to me if they were planning on replacing all of them or not.
I want to be clear, like the value here isn't like we have another way of getting the metrics from like the metrics on the node. That is not the value in switching to CRI. Like that's like the how, right? The proposal is how do we get 1 second granularity metrics for containers within a workload, for instance, or C group aggregated. I want to see a histogram of the C groups within a node across a cluster. And I'm not like, is there any, do we see like, for instance, kube state metrics starting to do 1 second sampling and then storing those in ring buffers in memory and then, you know, and walking trees in order to map, you know, pods into workloads and doing like these sorts of more sophisticated tasks?
It's probably not in roadmap for KSM in the near future, realistically.
And even like that wouldn't be fitted for what the purpose of KSM is.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing personally is that like we already have like this kind of granularity for the resource metrics endpoints. Like we already have a way to scrape like the pod usage, container usage more often. The only limit today is that Kubelet doesn't like. It was shown that we are like it's impossible to get down to 1 second because CAdvisor is not optimized, and the way forward is to move to like either fix CAdvisor or move to the CRI's metrics. So I think like this part is already covered, but not the part about like the actual operation of like providing the actual percentile and stuff like that. But from that other side, I'm also thinking that even with a 1 second scrape interval, in my opinion, Prometheus should be more optimized than whatever solution we come up with. Because even if the scrapes is done more often, the data will be put onto the disk, like it won't be on RAM more often, like because it's put onto the disk after a certain amount of scrapes. And in terms of optimization for searching the data and then applying the actual mathematics, this is well done in Prometheus and should be pretty fast as well.
My problem, I think, with the going through, like, focusing the kubelet part and getting a resolution there is, like, sure, we have the resource metrics endpoints now and have more resolution. Summary API, like, is still not actually a proper public API. There is no clients for it. Like, kubelet doesn't have an API when it comes to that we actually tell people to use. We just use it, to my understanding. And the resource metrics, it's also always still loaded on the kubelet. I actually like moving these things out of the kubelet, or like making available inside to reduce the strain this puts on the kubelet. Like with the amount of metric we sometimes read in GKE, I would actually prefer a way that doesn't go through the kubelet anymore.
I just have a question. Let's say we switch to whatever way of getting the metrics on the node of choice is. Like I have no opinion about it, right? So let's say there's like a preferred way, which is, you know, the container runtime interface, or it really is C advisor. We resurrect it from the dead, whatever it is, right? Like if we just switch to that, does that address the, now we have two ways of doing this thing aspect of this? It seemed like that was part of the concern. Is that correct read on what the concern was?
I think I think the open question is like, does it make sense to roll some of this into the kubelet directly?
It's going to be hard to roll in the aggregation aspect. Like I didn't really cover all the use cases, right? But the aspect of scrape, like collecting all the samples from all the nodes and then or sorting them, right? So sorting. So let's say you have 300 samples per container, and you have, let's say, 100 replicas for pod replicas for deployment, spread across, let's say, you know, 2 replica sets because it's mid rollout. Like collecting those 300 samples per container times 100 pods, you got 30,000 samples there. Now you sort them. Now you do P95. Like those sorts of operations, I don't think make sense to do in either the kubelet or in kube state metrics.
So we're at time. What would our next steps be here? Not to cut off this discussion, but I think we're not meeting for another month because our next biweekly conflicts with KubeCon.
Oh, by the way, we're having a SIG face-to-face at KubeCon on Monday. So if you want to attend it, I think 10:15 or 10:30 in the morning on Monday during the week of KubeCon. And yeah, we should definitely talk about this, I think.
I think a number of us aren't going to be at KubeCon. I'm not going to be at KubeCon. I think Phil said he was not going to be at KubeCon, so I don't know if we can talk about this there necessarily and have all the right people in the room.
I am personally okay with rolling this into the SIG. I think
we clearly have a lot of interest, and I think a lot of like people who are looking to contribute. And as an out of tree thing, I don't really have any concerns of like throwing it in the SIG's project and seeing what happens. We would just need like a list of people for approvers, reviewers, repo admins, that kind of thing. And we can POC it. And if it turns out that like, you know, this isn't the best fit, then we can do that once we actually, you know, see and work with the code.
And if good stuff falls out of it, it can go into kubelet or other parts. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we do, my suggestion would be like, I'd be fine with like a 3-month evaluation period. It's harder to evaluate when you can't see the code or can't run it.
That sounds reasonable. Who wants to take the action item of creating the SIG repos?
I can take the AI to make the issue and all that jazz.
Great.
And Phil, would you be able to get me a list of people who should be admins, approvers, reviewers?
Yeah.
There's lots of folks on this call who sound interested. So like, let's keep up that momentum. Thank you for being interested.
You can Slack me. I'm PWitRock in the Kubernetes Slack if you're interested, or add to the agenda, and then I'll do my best to make sure everyone's we reach out to everyone that has interest. And yeah, Alana, I'll get you a list of names.
Great. Back over to you, David. Are we done?
I think that's it for the agenda. So thanks everyone for joining. Sorry we ran long, and see everyone at see some people at KubeCon.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.